Good morning. What you are about to watch is the first in a series of presentations about the 50 golden years blessed by the Lord of the Christian congregation known as Prince of Peace Lutheran Church of Anaheim. In June of 1955, Zion Lutheran Church of Anaheim has some problems. Members were objecting to all of the children in church services. The Sunday school was too small for the number of children attending, so they purchased a Christian Science building next to their existing property to be used as an extension for their Sunday school. Right around that time, the Reverend T.G. Goldkey, the chaplain at the Lutheran Home, was nearing retirement and wanted to start a new church. The Lutheran Home generously allowed him to convince Zion to relocate to their Sunday school building on the southwest corner of their property. Note the telephone poles on the right side of the picture. These are the same poles that are on the rear of our existing property today. December 1955, 6 months later, the Reverend T.G. Goldkey began to hold services for the children and their parents in what is now an extension of Zion Lutheran Church. Almost a year later, in October of 1956, the district office placed the Reverend R.F. Jingle as a pastor on a temporary basis until they could call a full-time pastor to become a permanent missionary at large for the southwest section of Anaheim. The first official service was held. The attendance averaged 45 members that month. February of 1957, Mr. William Heide Sr. and 6 men of Zion's congregation met to organize the Prince of Peace Lutheran Church of Anaheim. In October of 1957, the mission board assigned the Reverend Robert T. Wobrock to become the missionary at large. He was to serve this area and this parish in particular. In December of 1957, Pastor Wobrock was officially called to be the pastor of the new congregation. In April of 1958, the congregation requested and was accepted as an organized congregation of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod of the Southern California District. And in September of 1958, Pastor Wobrock was officially called as the pastor of Prince of Peace Lutheran Church. April 12, 1959, charter membership was closed, with 79 members signing the Constitution. In the coming installments, we will see how the members of this new congregation were led by the Lord to build His church in this location. After signing the charter in April of 1959, it became time to find a place for our new church. Within a few days, the congregation purchased this 3.85 acres of orange grove from the Lutheran Home. Not much traffic on Ball Road back then, was there? In September of '59, they purchased this home at 808 Gilbuck, just around the corner to the west. And with the help of some of the members, Reverend Robach and his family moved in. Meanwhile, over at 1451 West Ball Road, other members were busy preparing the property for the parish hall by cutting down trees, bulldozing trees, and pushing them into an open fire. Did you see the smoke above the trees? After the land was cleared, the parish hall was moved to its new location. Later on, we'll see why it's so far back on the lot. With the building supported above ground, trenches were dug for the new foundation. Cement was poured, and the building lowered onto its last resting place. With the building sitting on its own foundation, the members started cleaning up and preparing the inside for use again. Did you see the guy painting with a dress shirt and pants? Sure was a lot different than today. All members pitched in to prepare the building for use. The dirt was watered to keep down the dust, the outside was painted and painted and painted, and the windows were cleaned, all by the members of the congregation. I believe I even saw the pastor painting. During the preparation of the building, services were being held here in the still existing chapel of the Lutheran Home. Notice how the people dressed in the 50s. The members were so anxious to use a new facility that they started services before the outside was even finished. Notice the dirt at the bottom of the steps. So a walkway was laid and cement poured so they could enter with all the mud on their shoes or stand around and talk after the service without getting the shoes dirty. The driveway and parking areas were graded, and asphalt was laid for a driveway and the parking area. And it was time for a gathering of the congregational families for an outing. What's that? You don't suppose this is the first potluck, do you? Games were played. Even some adults were involved, some in less active endeavors. That's it for today. Our next installment will start our building phase. In January of 1960, after they finished setting up the wood frame building and purchasing a parsonage for the pastor, it was time to start working on the first of the permanent buildings for the congregation, a combination fellowship hall and sanctuary. The footprint of the new fellowship hall was laid out and marked with posts and flags. Judging from the darkness of the picture, I would say that it was not one of sunny California's best days. In February, the area where the sanctuary was to be built was consecrated by Reverend Wolbrock, along with members Harry Duvall and John Nagy and others for God's use, followed by a groundbreaking ceremony. The attendees appear to be positioned in locations where the pulpit, the choir, and the congregational members were to be in the finished building. Looks like one person was having his own groundbreaking ceremony right over here. Once again, the members started digging trenches and making forms for the footings of the new fellowship hall. I'm not sure, but one of those men looks like a young Bill Black. I don't recognize the other person. Plumbing was laid, footers were poured, sand was dumped and leveled in preparation for the cement floor of the fellowship hall. Here are two of our finest inspectors checking the level of the sand. Now the cement for the floor of the fellowship hall was poured. All of this was done by the members of the congregation, some that worked in the trade, such as carpenters and plumbers. Others, such as insurance salesmen, teachers, engineers, pharmacists, etc. Not all were professionals in the trades, but everybody pitched in together. Walls started being built. Professionals worked alongside of non-professionals. Notice the man on the right. Bam, bam, the nail's in. The one on the left is tap, 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 tap. Standing up and placing the walls required teamwork. Ooh, whoa, almost lost that one. Shades of Henry Ford. They even cleaned the cement off the lumber used to make the footers, so that they could be used in the walls of the fellowship hall. Germans are noted for their frugality at times. For 10 months, the members of this congregation and their families sawed, hammered, grunted, and gave of their time to build a fellowship hall that could be used as the sanctuary, where they could gather and worship their Lord until a bigger church could be built later on. Times were simpler in the 60s. People used their non-working hours to interact with others. Nowadays, we seem to be chasing around from one activity to another or just watching TV. They also made lifelong friendships that continue even until today, 50 years later. And they gave great memories to their children while leaving a great legacy for future generations. It's now November of 1960. 10 months later, and even though the grounds are not complete, the congregation gathered and moved to the new building for their first service inside. By Easter of 1961, they had a fence to hide the back lot. That was John Nagy working on the fence. Others were busy planting palm trees and flowers, while others were busy cutting and trimming the grass in front of the new church. It is now 1962. The original 62 members have gone from a small one-room building to the newly completed sanctuary and fellowship hall. They have grown to a congregation of 231 members, and they celebrated their first Easter morning sunrise service at the Three Crosses at the left of the screen. The pulpit, lectern, altar, collection bag holders, baptismal font, seats for the pastor and acolytes, and the altar rail were all made and donated by a member named Jack Manweiler from his cabinetry shop. No pews yet, though. Remember, this was supposed to be a combination sanctuary and fellowship hall, so we used folding chairs for services. For years. A lighted sign display was built. This is Bill Haas, who despite his age and physical problems was very involved in these early projects. Names of all the people involved here have become lost from our files or memories, but their work has endured for several decades already. In 1962, the Voters' Assembly elected to start a Christian day school. The day school officials called this lady, Anna Meyerhoff, out of retirement to teach the first kindergarten class. These 16 children started in May of 1962, and in September were her first graduating class. Among them were Greg Duvall, Phil Claypool, Jim Yonke, Christine Wolbrock, and Albert Sharp. Starting a Christian day school created a need for an addition to the existing sanctuary and construction of an educational unit. The ground where the educational unit was to be built was consecrated. Here we see church officers John Nagy, Harry Duvall, and others breaking the ground for the future Christian day school. Shortly after, demolition was started on the west side of the building. That looks like John Nagy and Jim Yonke on the roof, removing the fascia board, while others are busy tearing off the stucco. At the end of the day, time to relax, have a drink, and discuss our activities of the day. You can see the results of the day's work in the background. Hooray! Construction has started on the Christian Day School building. The foundation is complete. Henry Ford's philosophy is showing again, as we see Ed Roloffs carrying some of the formed lumber over to the field. It looks like John Gallern in the background there. Others are scraping the lumber used to form the foundation, just like before. Everyone pitched in. Kids carried scraps away from the work. There were even women and children helping to keep their work area clean. It's a struggle, but these two are determined that they're going to get their load to the scrap pile. Here are some scenes of members who were involved in construction of the first Christian day school. John Gallon, Fred Briegel and Paul Nighthouse, Don Duffy, John Nagy, Harry Duvall, Carl Workowski, Hal Fellbaum, Jim Yonke, Grant Detweiler, Pastor Wolbrock, Dave Claypool, Mrs. Gallon, Ced White, Al Edwards, and John Johnson. These people and many other members gave freely of their time and money to further the word of our Lord. Judging from what we have seen, their commitment to the Lord has set the stage for us to appreciate that God has given this congregation 50 golden years of His blessings. It is 1963 now. After completion of closets, sink cabinets, chalkboards, etc., the congregation hired a first-grade teacher for one of the rooms, and Mrs. Meyerhoff moved into the other. Now that they have almost finished the Christian Day School building, they need to begin staffing. To do this, they contacted Concordia Teachers College in Seward, Nebraska, for names of teachers that might fit our needs. A Mr. John Johnson was called. Why don't we let the person they called tell us about his divine call to Prince of Peace? Here's Johnny! What did Pastor Wolbrock say when he extended Prince of Peace's call?
I received a call from Pastor Wolbrock indicating that Prince of Peace had called me as their principal, and the call was from Anaheim in the shadow of the Matterhorn. Was excited about that, and I was looking forward to serving the Lord in Anaheim rather than Alhambra, which I thought were twin cities.
What were your feelings about your call here?
Prince of Peace School and Congregation was a very energetic and growing congregation, and I was excited about developing the curriculum. But in addition, as the enrollment increased, it meant that we had to find space. Therefore, we had architects come in, and there was a building to be 2 stories high. And the amazing thing about the congregation was people within the congregation were going to build this building. And that's something that I really first experience I had ever had. And I guess I've been told I crawled the rafters, I painted, I pulled everything, who knows. But it was kind of exciting because I knew that had to be finished because our enrollment was increasing and we had to find a place for these students.
In 1964, we continued to expand the Christian Day School by making available grades 3 and 4. Concordia Teachers College presented us with names of graduates that might be willing to join us and serve as a 2nd and 3rd grade teacher. We called Miss Carol Spitzer. She accepted. Soon afterwards, she married Roger Bertner, and his work took them elsewhere for a few years. They returned, and Carol now serves the congregation in this capacity. In December of 1964, Pastor Wolbrock received a call to Emmaus First Lutheran in Alhambra. He accepted just prior to Christmas and left us in mid-February of 1965. Reverend John Schumacher served as an interim pastor until the congregation called the Reverend Eric Elschlager, more commonly known as Pastor O, on September 26 of 1965. Our Christian Day School continued to expand, so we initiated another call for a combination 5th and 6th grade teacher. This lady, Mrs. Dorothy Eisenhower, accepted and joined us to complement our elementary Christian Day School staff. Due to the growth experienced by the Christian Day School in 1997, the congregation decided to enter another building phase. With Pastor O leading, we consecrated and broke ground north of the original single-story school building. This would be a 2-story building to house 4 classrooms, an office for the school, several more restrooms, and school supplies storage work area. All grades would then have their own room and teacher. Under the direction of building committee,